The global notification arrived simultaneously, a digital chime echoing across every device on the entire planet. It displayed a precise, ticking countdown clock, marking the exact second of every individual's inevitable death. The comforting veil of an unknown future was stripped away, shattering the foundation of human existence. Society plunged into a profound psychological collapse as the reality of these finite numbers took hold. Panic rippled through crowded city streets, where strangers stared at their phones with hollow, terrified eyes. The mystery that once fueled human curiosity was replaced by a cold, calculated, and relentless countdown. People reacted in polarized ways, struggling to process the weight of their own predetermined final moments. Some embraced a reckless, nihilistic freedom, believing they were invincible until their specific time finally arrived. These individuals engaged in dangerous behaviors, casting aside all caution as if life were a game. They drove at breakneck speeds and ignored every societal norm, fueled by the certainty of survival. Conversely, others succumbed to a paralyzing indifference, abandoning long-term ambitions and their once cherished career goals. Education systems faltered as students realized that their future degrees might never be put to use. The drive to build, create, and innovate withered under the crushing pressure of a visible expiration. While some found a newfound brutal honesty in their relationships, shedding fake politeness to express love, couples sat in silence, finally speaking the apologies they had held back for far too many years. Yet, despite these moments of clarity, the world began to fracture into isolated and fearful pockets. The loss of the unknown transformed life from a vibrant, unpredictable journey into a rigid sequence. Every event felt predetermined, stripping away the agency that had once defined the human experience entirely. Humanity was forced to confront the terrifying reality that time was no longer a vast resource. Instead, it had become a finite, visible commodity, measured in seconds, that ticked away without mercy. The global silence grew heavy, punctuated only by the soft, rhythmic hum of billions of clocks. Families gathered in living rooms, watching their children with a mixture of profound love and dread. The weight of the numbers hung in the air, invisible yet heavier than any physical burden. Every interaction became colored by the knowledge of when the final goodbye would eventually take place. Trust evaporated as people began to view one another through the lens of their remaining time. The social contract, once based on mutual growth, began to fray at its very fragile edges. Those with longer countdowns were viewed with envy, while the short-lived were treated with tragic pity. The world had become a theater of the absurd, where the script was already fully written. No one could hide from the truth anymore, as the numbers burned bright on every screen. The collective psyche of humanity fractured, unable to reconcile the sudden loss of their beautiful ignorance. A 20-year-old man stared at his screen, seeing only 1 month remaining before his sudden end. Across the city, an elderly man checked his device, noting he had decades left to live. The disparity between these two lives created a deep, unbridgeable chasm in their shared human experience. Ambition became a luxury reserved only for those whose clocks promised a long and distant future. Why invest in a decade of study when the timer clearly showed only 5 years remaining? Long-term projects were abandoned in favor of immediate, fleeting pleasures that required no future investment. The concept of a career path dissolved, replaced by a desperate scramble for present-day satisfaction. Yet, in this chaos, a strange, sharp honesty began to permeate the most intimate of conversations. Fake pleasantries were discarded, as people realized they simply lacked the time for social performance. Love was confessed with a frantic urgency, as if the words themselves could anchor them together. Apologies were offered freely, clearing the emotional clutter that had accumulated over many wasted years. People lived more realistically, stripping away the layers of pretense that once defined their daily interactions. The fear of death, once a looming shadow, now felt like a fixed, manageable calendar date. This shift in perspective altered the very fabric of how individuals prioritized their most precious hours. Some found peace in the certainty, while others spiraled into a deep and dark existential despair. The world became a place where every second was accounted for, measured, and weighed against death. Life, once a vast ocean of possibility, shrunk into a narrow, clearly defined and visible stream. Every choice was made with the ticking clock in mind, influencing even the smallest daily decisions. The beauty of the unknown was gone, replaced by the stark, unyielding reality of the end. Humanity struggled to find meaning in a life that had been reduced to a simple countdown. The psychological toll was immense, leaving no corner of the globe untouched by this new truth. Yet, in the cracks of this broken society, small acts of kindness flickered like dying embers. People clung to one another, seeking warmth in the face of their inevitable, scheduled final departure. The countdowns continued their relentless march, indifferent to the joy or sorrow they caused daily. Every heartbeat was a reminder of the time slipping away, recorded on the glowing digital screens. The world was irrevocably changed, moving toward a future that was no longer a mystery. We had traded our beautiful ignorance for the cold, hard precision of our own final expiration. The question remained whether this knowledge would liberate us, or simply accelerate our collective decline. We watched the seconds pass, knowing exactly when the music would stop for every single soul. The countdown was the only truth left in a world that had lost its vibrant, unpredictable heart. As the initial shock fades, the structural integrity of civilization begins to dissolve under the weight. Economic systems collapse as insurance and banking models, once built on probability, become obsolete in certainty. A new, cruel form of discrimination emerges, where individuals are judged solely by their remaining lifespan. This grim reality affects everything from job prospects to romantic viability in a fractured, desperate world. Families struggle with the haunting foresight of loss, leading to a sharp decline in birth rates. People fear the emotional burden of raising children who already possess known, fixed expiration dates. Governments and militaries manipulate these timelines, creating a society divided by the length of one's life. Politicians grapple with the temptation of reckless governance, knowing their own end is already clearly marked. The global infrastructure, once reliant on long-term planning, now crumbles under the pressure of finite time. Banks shutter their doors as the concept of future interest becomes meaningless in a dying world. Insurance companies dissolve overnight, unable to calculate risk when the outcome is already perfectly known. In the streets, a cold hierarchy forms based entirely on the digits glowing on digital screens. Those with decades remaining look down upon the short-timers with a mix of pity and malice. Job interviews become brief, transactional affairs where a long countdown is the only desired qualification. Romantic partners scrutinize each other's timers before committing to even the simplest of shared dreams. The intimacy of love is replaced by a cold, mathematical assessment of who will outlive whom. Parents stare at their infants, weeping as they calculate the exact day their children will vanish. The joy of watching a child grow is tainted by the looming shadow of their expiration. Birth rates plummet as the world collectively decides that existence is too painful to pass on. Governments hoard resources, favoring those with longer timers to ensure a semblance of national continuity. Military leaders draft soldiers based on their remaining years, treating human life as a disposable asset. The promise of a future is gone, replaced by a rigid, predetermined sequence of inevitable events. Corruption spreads as those with short timers sell their remaining days for fleeting, desperate material comforts. The halls of power are filled with leaders who govern only for the sake of themselves. They ignore the crumbling infrastructure, focusing instead on their own final, selfish, and hedonistic pursuits. The world is left to wonder if this transparency has made life more honest or hollow. It becomes clear that the beauty of our existence was always rooted in its deep uncertainty. Without the mystery of the end, the human spirit struggles to find meaning in the mundane. Every action is now weighed against the ticking clock, stripping away the spontaneity of daily life. The vibrant journey of humanity has been reduced to a cold, calculated, and predictable countdown. We are prisoners of our own knowledge, watching the seconds bleed away into the silent void. The tragedy is not that we die, but that we now know exactly when it happens. Hope is a ghost in a machine that only understands the finality of the coming dark. The world stands still, waiting for the final second to arrive for every single living soul. In this hollow reality, we search for a purpose that no longer exists in our time. Ultimately, we realize that the end was always there, but knowing it has destroyed the beginning.